All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating, shall we? Green hydrogen in India. There's this article from Renewable Energy India that really breaks down their new green hydrogen policy. And, well, we're going to break it down even further. What this could mean for their energy, heck, for their entire economic future, how they even plan to make this green hydrogen thing actually work, all the good stuff, the challenges, the opportunities, we're covering it all.
Yeah, and it's a big deal because India has a real shot at becoming a major player in this whole green hydrogen game globally.
Absolutely, a real game changer. But hold on, for those who might be, let's say, new to the party, could you give us a little Green Hydrogen 101? What is it exactly, and why is everyone making such a fuss?
Okay, so imagine this, right? Powering your house with energy that's like stored sunlight, captured days, maybe even weeks ago. That's the potential of green hydrogen. You see, it's made by splitting water, but not just any splitting. We're talking about using renewable energy sources, your solar, your wind power, through this process called electrolysis. Boom, pure hydrogen. No carbon emissions, clean energy, the kind that could really, well, change the game.
And it's not just about being eco-warriors for India either. The article, it really drives home the point that they see this as a way to break free from those energy imports, boost their own manufacturing, even reshape their whole economic landscape. This isn't just some energy policy. This is economic strategy with a capital S.
Couldn't have put it better myself. I mean, think about it. Right now, they rely so much on energy imports. Green hydrogen, it's a path to energy independence. That's huge, not just for their wallets, but for their global standing too, right?
No doubt about it. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. This new policy of theirs, it lays out some pretty sweet deals to get this industry up and running. What were some of the things that really popped out at you?
Oh, there's a big one for sure. They're offering free access to the power grid for like 25 years. To those who jump on the green hydrogen train early, that is, meaning no charges for transmitting electricity, which, let me tell you, those can be a real roadblock for companies trying to enter the market. And it's not just about the freebies. They're focusing on making transmission cheaper, easier overall, which is a win for the whole renewable energy sector, really.
Free grid access, 25 years. That sounds like a dream come true. But, there's always a but, right? Any potential downsides, unintended consequences, maybe.
You see, that's where things get a little tricky. The article, it mentions these things called cross-subsidy charges. Basically, if someone's getting a free ride, someone else has to pick up the tab, right? So this could mean higher electricity bills for, say, households in those industries not part of the green hydrogen program. And that's the million-dollar question. How are these costs going to be spread around, managed? The policy, it doesn't quite spell that out,
Something to think about, for sure. Okay, on to another interesting tidbit. The article throws around this term, energy banking. Care to enlighten us? How does that fit into this whole picture?
Energy banking, it's like having a piggy bank, but for energy, right?
Right.
Specifically your extra renewable energy. So say you've got a ton of solar or wind power. When it's abundant, you store it. Save it for later when those sources might be playing hooky, and then bam, you use it in that electrolysis process we talked about. Now, the policy allows for a 30-day banking period, which, well, it does raise some interesting questions, like how practical is storage really? And what about energy loss during that time?
Makes sense on paper, but 30 days. Does that really cut it when we're talking about green hydrogen production on a massive scale? Is that enough time to be, practical?
That's the question, isn't it? Will 30 days actually do the trick? It really depends on several things. How much storage can they handle? How fickle are those renewable energy sources in specific locations? And let's not forget the efficiency of the storage tech itself. Those are all pieces of the puzzle.
So, while these incentives, they're definitely tempting, there's some, let's say, logistical wrinkles to iron out. And it seems like, maybe they're missing some key ingredients in this recipe. The article points out there are no rules saying industries have to use this green hydrogen. Wouldn't that be the most straightforward way to get the demand going?
You're not wrong. Mandates, they can definitely get things moving. But there's always a flip side. Force industries to switch before green hydrogen is truly cost competitive, you might hit some major resistance. Could even stifle innovation, The government, they seem to be playing the long game. Create a friendly environment for green hydrogen to flourish on its own merit, at least while it's still finding its footing.
And there's no, direct funding for developing the electrolyzer technology either, which, it's the heart of it all, isn't it? That's what makes green hydrogen possible in the first place.
Yeah, No dedicated cash for electrolyzers. Might raise some eyebrows, that's for sure. But maybe they're betting on private investors to step up, fill the gap. Or who knows, maybe there are other plans brewing, initiatives aimed specifically at boosting electrolyzer manufacturing. Got to keep in mind, this policy, it's just the first chapter. Things will change, adapt as the market reacts, technology develops, it's a dynamic process.
The article sums it up nicely, calling the policy a good directional step. Do you think that hits the nail on the head? Captures both the potential and the limitations of what they've announced so far.
I think that's pretty spot on. This policy, it's a clear signal, a beacon from the Indian government. They're serious about green hydrogen. They see its potential to, completely transform their energy landscape. Does it have all the answers? Solve every single problem? No. But it lays the groundwork, creates a framework for the industry to take root and grow. Now, whether it truly succeeds, well, that's going to depend on how well they execute this policy, how the market embraces it, and how they adapt future policies to, well, all the curveballs that are bound to come their way.
Yeah. So the stage is set, the players are lining up, but the real drama, well, that's about to unfold. We've talked a lot about those supply side incentives, but the other side of the coin, the demand, that's equally important. What's it going to take for industries to actually jump on board with this green hydrogen, make it a real contender? That's something we'll be digging into when we get back. So we've been unpacking this whole green hydrogen policy in India, and it's pretty clear they're aiming high, hoping to really shake things up in the energy world. But like we were saying before, getting the green hydrogen flowing, that's only half the battle, right? What about the demand side of things? What are your thoughts on that? What's it going to take for industries to actually say, okay, we're using this stuff?
Yeah, that's I guess you could say the make or break point, isn't it? You could have mountains of this green hydrogen just sitting around, but if nobody's buying, well, the whole thing kind of falls apart. The article, it does mention some potential future mandates, like for those big industries, fertilizer production, oil refining, those kinds of things. But for now, seems like they're putting their faith in the market to sort of, stimulate that demand organically.
So how do we get from potential to everyone's using it? What's got to happen for green hydrogen to become the obvious choice?
Well, there's the elephant in the room, right? The cost.
Yeah.
Right now, most hydrogen, it comes from fossil fuels, and it's way cheaper. For green hydrogen to really compete, that price tag needs to come down, way down. And that's where all those juicy policy incentives we talked about, those come in. They can help bridge that gap, encourage those early adopters to take the plunge, and hopefully drive investment in making the whole production process just, more efficient.
So it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing then. You need enough people wanting it to justify making it cheaper, but it needs to be cheaper to get people wanting it in the first place.
Exactly. A classic catch-22. Happens with a lot of new technologies, really.
Yeah.
And then there's another biggie, infrastructure. You need the right setup to actually support widespread use of the stuff. Pipelines to move it around, big storage facilities, refueling stations, especially if we're talking about using it in vehicles. All that takes serious cash. Investors, they got to see a return on their money before they're going to shell out for all that, right?
It's a good reminder that these energy transitions, they're not just about flipping a switch, are they? It's a whole ecosystem, a whole system that needs to be built around it.
Right.
What else do you think will influence how quickly this green hydrogen takes off?
Well, you can't forget about the people. Consumers, the everyday folks, they need to be on board. They need to understand why this green hydrogen is a good thing and be willing to actually choose products, services that use it. Maybe that means buying a fuel cell car, supporting companies that are going green, or even just, speaking up, pushing for policies that support it. It's about more than just the tech itself.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the technical side of things, but at the end of the day, it's people who drive these changes, isn't it? The choices we make every day, whether it's what we buy, where we invest our money, even how we vote.
Oh, absolutely. Public perception, that social pressure, those individual actions, they all add up. It's about creating a whole culture of sustainability, recognizing that those energy choices, they have consequences, far beyond just our own little bubble.
The article, it really zeroes in on what India is doing domestically. But this green hydrogen thing, this is a global story. How does their approach stack up against what other countries are doing? And what about those geopolitical implications, huh? India wants to be a major player. What does that mean for everyone else?
That's a good point. It's a very mixed bag out there. The green hydrogen landscape, different countries, different strategies, makes sense. Everyone's starting from a different place, different priorities. Take Australia. Tons of sun, tons of wind. They're looking to become the big green hydrogen exporters, right? And then you've got the European Union, all in on that Green Deal of theirs. They're pushing hard for local production, want to clean up those heavy industries, steel, chemicals, you name it.
So where does India fit into all of this global green hydrogen puzzle?
Well, India, they're in a pretty interesting position, aren't they? They've got that massive potential for renewable energy, a huge and growing market within their own borders, and their manufacturing sector, that's booming. But they've also got those hurdles to overcome. Grid stability, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And they need a ton of investment. It's a balancing act, trying to grow their economy while also trying to clean things up.
Sounds like they're walking a tightrope. Have to compete globally, but also got to tailor their approach to their own unique situation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting to watch, right? They're not just copying what everyone else is doing. They're trying to play to their strengths, chart their own course. Like that focus on grid access transmission, that's strategic. That's addressing a real bottleneck they've got in their energy infrastructure.
It's more than just energy policy, isn't it? It's got those geopolitical angles, industrial strategy, even national pride, all mixed in with this whole green hydrogen push.
Oh, for sure. This global race for green hydrogen, it's got huge implications. Economic power, who's leading the tech pack, international relations, all of that's in play. Everyone wants a piece of the pie. They know whoever wins this, well, they're going to be in a good spot in the future when clean energy is king.
This has been a really fascinating look at this whole green hydrogen world, especially what India's up to. But before we wrap things up, let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Yep.
Why should our listeners care about this? This is happening on the other side of the world. What's the takeaway for them sitting here listening?
Well, here's the thing. This energy transition, it's global. What happens in India, it's going to have ripple effects everywhere. The choices we make now, whether we're consumers, investors, just everyday citizens, those choices are going to shape the world, the world of tomorrow. And by understanding what's going on, well, we can be more informed participants in that transition. Heck, we might even spot some opportunities that pop up from this whole shift to a cleaner energy future.
So stay informed, right? Recognize that this whole global energy landscape, it's all connected. And maybe even take a page from India's book, They're Thinking Big, Being Bold.
Yeah.
Something to think about as we all figure out our own path to a more sustainable future. It's really interesting seeing how different countries are approaching this whole green hydrogen thing, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own advantages and challenges. It feels like, like we're watching a whole new energy world being born. Yeah, it's definitely a dynamic time to be watching this space, that's for sure. All this momentum behind green hydrogen, it's really picking up speed. And I'd say the next few years, those are going to be crucial. We're going to see who comes out on top, who really establishes themselves as those leaders in this new energy landscape, right? We've talked a lot about the potential upsides, the good stuff, but what about the flip side? Are there any downsides? Risks with green hydrogen that we should, keep in mind?
That's a really important point to bring up. I mean, green hydrogen, it has a ton of potential, that's for sure. But it's not a magic solution, a cure-all. There are things to consider. One thing that comes to mind is how much energy it actually takes to make this stuff. Electrolysis, that process of splitting water to get hydrogen, it's energy intensive. And if that energy isn't coming from truly renewable sources, well, then the whole environmental benefit, it kind of takes a hit, doesn't it?
So you're saying there's a chance this green hydrogen, it might not be so green after all, if we're not, super careful about where that energy is coming from in the first place.
Exactly, yeah. Transparency, being able to trace where things are coming from in that whole supply chain, that's key. Got to make sure the hydrogen's actually sustainable, from start to finish. And then there's the whole scaling up issue. We've got those pilot projects, those demonstrations, they're great. But to actually meet global demand, that's a whole different ballgame. We need major investment, technological leaps to make that happen.
So it's not enough to just prove it works in a lab somewhere, right? It's got to be able to be produced on a gigantic scale to actually make a real difference.
That's it in a nutshell. Got to move beyond those niche uses, show that green hydrogen, it can hold its own across the board, right? Heavy industry, transportation, power generation, even, powering homes. And to do that, well, everyone's got to work together. Government, industry, researchers, all hands on deck to solve those technical puzzles, get those costs down.
Sounds like there's a ton of work to do, but also like a huge opportunity, right? For innovation, for collaboration, for everyone to, kind of come together on this. Looking ahead, but what are some of the big trends in the green hydrogen world that you're keeping an eye on?
Oh, there are a few, for sure. One that I'm particularly interested in is, those next-gen electrolyzers. Making those things more efficient, getting the price down, that's really the golden ticket, isn't it? To make green hydrogen truly competitive. And there's some really cool research happening in that area. New materials, new designs, things that could really boost performance, make a big difference.
So the technology itself, it's not set in stone. There's still room for, well, for some big breakthroughs that could really accelerate this whole green hydrogen adoption.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's that whole infrastructure thing, right? Got to build those pipelines, those storage hubs, the distribution networks, so we can actually, get this hydrogen to where it needs to go. And that's going to be, well, it's going to be a big undertaking. Tons of investment needed, lots of international cooperation for sure.
It seems like this is something that, well, no single country can really solve on its own. This needs global teamwork, doesn't it?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Green hydrogen, it has the potential to, really rewrite the rules of the global energy game. But to get there, countries, they got to work together, share what they know, coordinate those investments, make sure everyone's playing by the same rules. And we're already seeing those partnerships forming, international groups coming together, all focused on making this green hydrogen thing a reality.
This deep dive has been, well, incredibly insightful, to say the least. Really opened our eyes to this whole world of green hydrogen, and especially, India's really going for it. But as we wrap things up here, what's the one thing you really hope our listeners take away from all this?
I guess if I had to boil down to one thing, it would be this. Green hydrogen, it's not just some pie in the sky idea. It's a technology with real potential to tackle some of those really big challenges we're facing. Climate change, energy security, heck, even economic growth, and doing it all sustainably. It's complex, it's constantly evolving, but it's a story worth following because it could very well shape the future for all of us.
It's a good reminder, I think. The future isn't something that just, happens to us. We can shape it through the choices we make, the technologies we decide to get behind, the actions we take. Green hydrogen, it's just one piece of that puzzle, but it's a piece that could have a really significant impact on the world. Thanks for listening.